The reasons why Convoy ended up there was because they got permission. You would agree with me. Glen, Motz, and Larry Brock questioned security of Parliament. Here's the clip.
Motz, for a 5-minute round. Mr. Motz, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much, witnesses, for being here, and most importantly, thank you for the work that you and your departments do, and your services do for the Parliamentary Precinct and those who work in it. By all accounts, the trucker convoy was organized well in advance. They reached out to city officials attempting to coordinate, well in advance. I said weeks in advance. Did you, either one of Mr. Brookson or Mr. McDonnell, did you have any contact with organizers of the convoy itself ahead of them arriving here?
I did not.
Nor did I.
And what about with the police service? Did you have any conversations with them in the weeks leading up to their arrival here?
Larry was the contact point for the Ottawa Police.
Yeah, so ongoing conversations leading up as to how things started to come in from information and intelligence in order for us to commence our preparations. So there's always open dialogue with the partners.
Thank you. Mr. McDonnell, this is related to you and for you. Kevin Vickers, who is a well-known, you're a former boss and a well-known sergeant-at-arms and a well-respected law enforcement officer of many, many years. He's had some things to say about the convoy and the response to the convoy, and I just want to review a couple of those. He's called it the Canadian way, and he said that we solve these things through a measured approach, the Canadian way, dealing with public order and civil disobedience. It is a problem-solving model that includes all stakeholders: listening, education, communication, facilitation, and enforcement, but it's founded upon respecting the dignity of all people. Bringing these facilitators and stakeholders who have a mandate and responsibility to resolve the issue together, sit down and try to talk to come up with solutions and a compromise. Now, he also went on, and he made many other comments. He said, the Canadian way involves recognizing, accommodating, and reconciling differing perspectives and interests through informed, respectful debate and compromise. He also said that enforcement alone is always degrees of loss, simplistic view of the rule of law. So it's naive to think that this was going to be at all resolved through enforcement. He went on to say that, my friends, there is another way. Enforcement, how is that working for you? Enforcement means degrees of losing for everyone. We are better than this, Canada. Respect, dialogue, understanding, and empathy. He also said, respect actually means listening to something you'd rather not hear, and listening must include the possibility of recognizing there may be a meaningful grievance on the other side. Now, I know that, and I respect the position you're in. I'm not asking you specifically to weigh in on what could or should have been done, but these comments come from an individual that I know you respect and has a position. Can you provide any comments to us on that position and your view of the response to the emergencies, or the protest and the invocation of the Emergencies Act?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Kevin was a respected police officer. I was a police officer for 31 years. And I've met lots of colleagues, worked with many who I respected, but there's always a variance of opinion. Many have expressed their opinions about different incidents, occurrences in different forms. I'll let Kevin's comments speak for himself. I will not weigh in on them.
I will, because it appears obvious to me and to millions of Canadians that the convoy protest could have been concluded much differently than what it was by the Prime Minister and his government. Rather than having a heavy-handed approach with the invocation of the Emergencies Act, this protest could have been resolved through significantly sooner had they only been shown some respect, offered some dignity, and actually been listened to, something that maybe the Prime Minister and the ministers didn't want to hear. Had they done that, I think that they may have heard a meaningful grievance from the other side, and the situation, in all probability, could have been resolved significantly sooner without the enforcement action. But thank you for your comments. I'm done.
Thank you very much, Mr. Motz. We will now begin the 5-minute round with Mr. Motz. Mr. Motz, you have 5 minutes and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. Mr. McDonnell and Mr. Brookson, I'd like to each get your perspective on, with your background in policing experience and the cooperation required to deal with an incident that occurred here January, February, what lessons are to be learned from the policing response during this particular convoy, from your perspective, because that impacts us here. So from your perspective, what learning should we be looking at?
As a former police officer and in charge of protective operations, assistant commissioner at one point, I would say listen to your intelligence, listen to your experts, and set it up, your posture, set it up days out, and set it up right.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I echo the comments of Mr. McDonnell. I think, with respect to the Ottawa Police Service, we can sense the change on just how the Panda game, for instance, is going to be addressed. And you go back 1 year as to how the choice was back then, and it wasn't well. So I'm very pleased and happy with the changes that seem to be occurring at the Ottawa Police Service. And so I'm looking at that as an extreme positive moving forward.
Thank you for that. And Chair, I'm going to try and share some time with Mr. Brock because I know they probably won't get to the second round of this. Mr. Brooks, and you provided testimony here that the weeks before the convoy arrived, that you guys asked, the PPS asked for Wellington Street to be frozen, to not have vehicle access to it, which tells me that obviously there had to be contact between the convoy organizers and the City of Ottawa or the Ottawa Police Service. Would that be your assessment as well? And the direction that the reason the convoy ended up on front of the Parliament on Wellington is because of the permissions given by the City and by the Ottawa Police Service? Would that be a fair assessment?
That would be a fair assessment, I'm sure.
Okay. So also, and with both your experiences, you know that in many of the protests that occur, whether here on Parliament Hill or in other parts of the country or even the globe, that there will be those who have extremist views, who have nothing to do with the actual protest itself, attach themselves to that and try to either fly under the radar under that protest protection or propagate their own agendas separate from that of the protest. And we've seen that in Coots. The people involved with the firearms in Coots had nothing to do with the protest. Would that be a fair assessment from both of your experiences with this particular situation, as well as the in their circumstances?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that would be correct.
Mr. McDonnell?
Yeah, I don't have first-hand information of who was in the crowd, although I will agree that it's common that radical groups will attach themselves to lawful protests.
Okay.
But in this particular instance, I'd have no first-hand knowledge.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn it over to Mr. Rock.
Thank you, gentlemen. You previously responded to a few of my colleagues, particularly you, Mr. Brookson, about your heightened concerns regarding the unknown in the vehicles and in the trucks. And you indicated that heightened concern was rather high without putting an actual number on it. And that continued largely throughout the entire protest until it was disbanded. Can you share with me whether or not you received any intelligence reports from any police service or CSIS that either confirmed your suspicions or simply dispelled that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no.
No?
I did not receive any direct information to suggest otherwise.
And I know that you specifically, because you testified about this in June, you testified that you wrote or you spoke to the RCMP and you requested CBRNE sensing to be conducted within days of the arrival of these truckers, and the RCMP did not comply with that request. And the reason for that was?
Security concerns for the individuals. We're not talking about police officers that would conduct that assessment. We're talking about civilians, and it was deemed to be unsafe.
That does conclude the end of the 5 minutes. We will now